this building. That letter to the school board got it back on, and of course it passed successfully. I think she had a lot to do with it being passed as well. Ms. Caldwell, we love you. You're a great teacher. The great thing about it, she's not going away. She's going to be up here. She's going to be a substitute for us every week. At this time, I'm very proud to introduce Mr. Jamie Holder. Mr. Jamie Holder worked with Ms. Caldwell for many years, and he knows more about Ms. Caldwell than anybody in our district.
Good afternoon. I've been around this place a long time enough to know that I would never want to follow Mrs. Caldwell or one of her students speaking, so I asked Mr. Sratt to put me in. I have no problem following Mr. Sratt speaking. I have following one of Mrs. Caldwell's former students. Janice, I will try and avoid the word like. I won't say repeatedly, you know, or just mumble, But you have to promise me that you won't start holding up your hands and doing that sign language that you speak to make people do. I've never ignored you before, but I will ignore that. Brother Robbie, I've always wondered, has she ever done that to you on your preaching? Not a good sign there. I'm honored to say a few words today as I represent a group of men that have had the pleasure of working for you. Jim Bernard, Donnie Williams, and Casey Dale, all current or former principals of Glendale High School that you helped make look so good. As a former history teacher, there have been certain dates that have always had a larger meaning for me. July 4th, 1776 was the day our great nation was born. December 7th, 1941 was the day that changed our world forever. And on July 20th, 1969, the first man walked on the moon. How many of you know what the significance of August 14th, 1992 is? That was Janice Caldwell's first day of work in Glendale ISD, and I think that was a huge day. There are many places I can start in talking about Mrs. Caldwell. What makes her so great at what she does? I believe from her parents, she inherited the perfect combination, a competitive spirit and a nurturing soul. Yeah. I will start by talking about her competitiveness and her toughness that she inherited from her father. There was a former semi-pro football player and later worked at the steel factories in Bessemer, Alabama, and later in Lone Star, Texas. From her father, she learned to compete, accept defeat but never be satisfied, and always be a gracious and humble winner. But leave no doubt she hates to lose. Nobody's fooled by that. While I was principal, I used to carry around this clipboard during our academic district meets, and I would have all the events on there, and I would be trying to keep up score and who was, how many points we're ahead or behind, and then Janice would casually walk up behind me and quietly say, we're up by 37 points, there's 3 events left, we had 9 in the finals, and I hope we can just hang on. I always wondered if we did miss the boat by not putting her on the sidelines of our Friday night football games. Her positive spirit, her competitiveness, and her relationship-building abilities are that powerful. She may have been worth a few more victories. Coach Caldwell, hat on her head, whistle around her neck. I can just see it now, so Janice, start studying your playbook. We may use you next year. I learned early in my tenure that as a principal that on the first day of school, you do not get in Janice's way. That day is sacred to her. You only have one chance to make the first impression. She stands in front of her class holding the door open, and we'll get to that in just a second. She introduces herself to each student. She looks them in the eye and gives a great firm handshake and tells them how glad she is that they are in her class. What a great first impression she does make. I did thought a lot about Janice's late mother and what her passion was. She was known throughout East Texas for her beautiful flowers. Her mother worked so hard cultivating the soil, planting the seeds, fertilizing the beds, weeding the beds, praying her beautiful flowers through the Texas floods and droughts, having the nurturing patience to allow nature to work its beauty, knowing that all the hard work would be worth it, so others would have the opportunity to enjoy their beauty. Selfless service at its best. Like her mother, Janice had to nurture and cultivate her students. Her classroom was her garden. She would plant those ninth graders, water them, praying over them, giving them the knowledge they needed to grow, occasionally having to stop and weed them when problems may arise in one of their lives, remaining patient with them when their ever-present problems of adolescence would overwhelm them. And then finally, 4 years would fly by, and a snap of a finger, it'd be time to graduate, walk across that stage, and into society. The whole world gets to enjoy their beauty, and like her mother, selfless service at its best. What it boils down to is that simple movement I mentioned earlier that Janice performs on the first day of every school continually repeats itself. Once you meet Janice Caldwell and walk through the door that she opens for you, it never stops. Her presence in your life opens doors forever. How many in this audience have had a door open somewhere in their life by Janice? It may have been as a student, a colleague, or a teacher, maybe a member of her church, an administrator. I could go on and on. Simply put, Janice, thank you for holding the door open for all of us. Our school, our community, our state, our nation, and this world are a better place because of you, Janice. I'd be remiss at this time if I didn't thank Janice's family for sharing her with us. Like any successful teacher or coach, there's always a loving spouse on the other end. He's being supportive, encouraging, is a great listener, I'm sure. Having to eat many fast food dinners because his wife is once again at another out-of-town meeting. Robbie, job well done by you also. Jason and April, continuing the legacy your mother started, and at the same time establishing your own identity in this profession. Please know how proud she is of you. Job well done to the Caldwell family. Confucius once said, choose a job that you love and you'll never have to work a day in your life. But Janice, your work starts now in retirement. Janice, enjoy today. Thank you for your selfless service, and please know how much we love you. At this time, we'll have Carrie's Dance Factory featuring Destiny Caldwell have a dance for Destiny's grandmother. I Dream a Dream. Thank you.
I dreamed a dream in time gone by.
speech, she was in Terrell. And she won state championships at Terrell as well. And we are very blessed today to have two of her former students, and they're going to speak to Ms. Caldwell at this time. Ms. Kayla Tucker Adams and Teal Young. Please welcome them.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's my esteemed honor and pleasure to stand before you all today to celebrate Mrs. Caldwell. Mrs. Caldwell was my speech and debate coach, as you guys heard, in Terrell High School, but she was much more than a speech and debate coach. Beyond that, she was a friend and a life coach, long before the term life coach was ever popularized. I call her life coach because she was far more than just a classroom teacher. Her teaching and love extended deep into my life, and it put me on the trajectory of success that I get to experience today. Mrs. Caldwell taught me how to enunciate my words correctly and tamed my Texas twang. I'll never forget the lessons from get to get and again to again. It's hard for me to even say it now because of how much we practiced it and worked on it. And it's weird, even today, people rarely know that I'm from Texas by the way I speak. So it sounds like she did a very good job in taming that Texas twang. She taught me to gather my thoughts, how to research and put a speech together, forming an opening, a middle, and a close of a speech. But more than that, she helped fuel my confidence, she fueled my love for communications, and helped me to discover my God-given talents. Because of Mrs. Caldwell's love and influence, I have a college degree in communications, and I have worked in communications for nearly 20 years. Because of Ms. Caldwell's love and influence, I'm a certified speech teacher, and I taught high school speech and communications and TV productions for 3 years in the public school system. Because of her love and influence, I have a love for communications, hosting events, doing television as well. I remember the very first time I ever interacted with a celebrity was in Mrs. Caldwell's class. We had a project where I did a talk show, and I interviewed LaVon Evans, who was an international model who lived right in Terrell but had been featured in national magazines. It was my very first time interacting with a celebrity, but it prepared me for my career in public relations and allowed me to be able to work with celebrities on a daily basis without becoming starstruck. And of course, Ms. Caldwell's love and influence are present in my life as I still speak all over the country even today. Ms. Caldwell is the type of teacher that I pray that my daughter will have the chance to experience at least once in her lifetime. So Ms. Caldwell, we thank you. All of us here today love you, and we salute you because your love, your influence, again, impacts our life way beyond just the classroom. We talk about you, and we talk about your influence in our daily lives. Even Teal and I, we just talked. He didn't want to come up here with me because he said, I don't want to follow you. But none of us want to follow each other because we all know that we are excellent, not just in speech, but we are excellent in life because of your influence. We love you, we thank you, and today we all salute you. Thank you.
That was my worst nightmare, having to follow one of my former students, Ms. Caldwell. In fact, I have to start this off. I graduated in 1986, so Ms. Caldwell was my teacher 30 years ago. And interesting enough, Kayla Tucker Adams, she's my son's godmother. My son is here today, he's 14. And that relationship formed between Kayla and I through the relationship with Mrs. Caldwell. We oftentimes spent time communicating, discussing strategies, informative speaking, persuasive speaking. One thing led to another, and the bond was funded between the between Kayla and I, like I said today, she's my son's godmother. To speak about Mrs. Caldwell is difficult for me. I drove in from Fort Worth today, and I wrote some notes, and of course everything I wanted to say, Ms. Adams said, so I was get and get. I had that written down. I looked at my son, I said, I was going to say it. And then when Kayla said that about hopefully having her daughter, Brooklyn, one day have a child that's influenced by one of her teachers, I said, man, I was going to say that. I had that written down too. And I hope that for my son who's 14 and entering into high school this upcoming year, that one day over the next 4 years, he'll have a teacher that impacts him in a way that changes his life. I remember being in high school and I was a pretty good athlete, and I was in Ms. Caldwell's class, and she recognized something in me, a skill set that I hadn't recognized in myself. And one day she approached me and she said, I'm sitting in the district in persuasive and informative speaking. I play football and basketball. I want to do that. You know, she's like, look, it's only going to make you better, and you're going to do it. Because you have such a respect for Mrs. Caldwell, she asked you to do something, you're going to do it. I went to district, and I won district, and went on to regions, and in the regional round, I was fourth in persuasive and fifth in informative. Those experiences on a short notice brought about an understanding in me that I could do all of these things. But the influence that Mrs. Caldwell had on me made me realize that I could really do these things. I'm in a business now that I travel often, and I had a client that had a boxing match last night in Las Vegas. And I needed to be there, and I was looking at the schedule, the flight schedules, and there was not a flight that would get me back in time, to be here today. There was one, but had I chosen that flight, it would have been on the cusp. And I said, I can't miss it. I can't have anything go wrong that would constitute me not being here to share this moment with Mrs. Caldwell. Mrs. Caldwell, I don't know if you realize the impact that you've made on so many people's lives. And it's very personal for me, because everything that I've been able to accomplish in life is all generated from my ability to communicate with people. And it all started in Terrell, in Mrs. Caldwell's classroom. And for me, I was talking to another one of our former students before this. For me, every day, everything that I do, there's a hint, a bit of influence of Janice Caldwell in my life. And I'm very thankful and appreciative of that. I lost my mom, it'll be 40 years ago this upcoming October. And I would say the word get. And I have to look, because Kayla, you didn't take all my words. And when I say uncomfortable, Ms. Caldwell would say, it's not uncomfortable. There are many other letters in this word are particular. And when I would speak to my mother would say to me, she said, there's a Mrs. Caldwell influence on your game. And I said, it is. And so I stand here today simply thanking Mrs. Caldwell and her support system, to Pastor, to April, to Robbie, again for sharing Mrs. Caldwell with me, and along with thousands and thousands of other students over her career. But I have the ability now to stand in front of audiences unprepared, and today is a lot of pressure. I was just recently speaking at a university, and the crowd was enormous. But I'm more nervous today for a number of reasons. First of all, it's difficult to stand in front of the person that taught you, that was the foundation of everything that you do.
Yes.
Secondly, to follow one of her students who's so powerful in speech, and to follow the principal and the superintendent. It's like, wow, this is a luck of the draw today. But I'm just thankful to be here. I'm thankful to be a part of this, and to express to Mrs. Caldwell and the others that are here your impact on me personally, and how you wore your faith on your sleeves.
Yes.
How you weren't afraid to speak about God and your relationship, and how you shared many stories in the classroom that at the time, perhaps, as we were passing we were passing those and trying to sneak them around. The stories that she would share, I didn't realize then that 30 years later, those stories would still be ringing loud and clear in my head. The influences and the lessons that I learned sitting in her classroom, attending the different tournaments, just gave me a foundation to carry throughout my life that I believe makes me better, because in my career today, everything that I do again is based off of my ability to communicate. And it all started with Janice Caldwell in Terrell, Texas. So today, I was going to salute too, but I can't. I salute you, and I thank you, Ms. Caldwell, for not only the impact that you made on me, but the impact of others that it rings vibrantly as I follow you on Facebook and your children on Facebook and former students on Facebook. There's just a common bond for every student that's been fortunate enough to have you as a teacher that I think that we all share, whether we know one another like Kayla and I do or not. If you've been in one of Ms. Caldwell's classrooms, you know it, and the people around you, they know it. So thank you for giving me a skill set that I'll carry until I take the last breath in my life. And it's because of you that I'm a better person, a better follower of Christ, and a better businessman. Thank you so much.
At this time, I want to introduce a former Glendale High School student, David Savage.
Good afternoon. Before I say what I was going to say, the last couple of people commented about the twang that Ms. Caldwell helped improve. And when I was getting ready to go back to school for graduate school, one of my interviews was in the Midwest and outside of Texas. And the interviewers, they were so stoic the whole interview. They didn't smile, they didn't grin, they didn't frown. They just were so mechanical throughout the interview. And I got to the end, and they asked me a question, and they said, did I have questions for them? And I asked one question. And then I said, well, do you have any more questions for me? And for the first time, they showed some emotion in about 30 minutes. And they said, are you really from Texas? And I said, yeah. And they said, well, you don't sound like you're from Texas. And I said, well, I had a really good speech teacher. And they looked at me and they said, well, do you thank her for that? And I said, yeah, I thank her quite often for that. So I first met Ms. Caldwell in the fall of 1999, and I was a freshman in this high school. I'd never taken a speech class before, and I didn't quite know what to expect. After all, how could learning how to speak take an entire year? Boy, I had so much to learn. Walking to her room for our first class together, I noticed Ms. Caldwell doing something I'd never seen a teacher do before. She stood at her doorway and then shook the hand of each student entering her class. Hi, I'm Mrs. Caldwell, she told me, and I'm happy that you're in my class this year. She shook my hand. In fact, she shook my hand nearly every class period for the next 4 years. This was just a number of qualities that set her apart from all of her peers. Weeks later, it came time for our first speeches in class, and I was so nervous. I spent nights writing and rewriting the lines of that first speech. When the day finally came for our class to deliver our presentations, Ms. Caldwell started out with an announcement. She stood sternly at her desk and said the following: "You have all worked so very hard for your speeches today, and you will do well. However, I that will fail you if you tease or make fun of any of your peers. It was such a contrast to the much nicer Miss Caldwell we had seen. But it was profound. In that moment, she created a safe space where each of us could grow. Her classroom speaking stage was the greenhouse for a garden of budding communicators. I gave my first speech that day. I remember walking to key positions on the stage. I remember talking about something and using hand gestures, but honestly, I don't remember a single word I actually said that day or today. But what I do recall is what happened next. There was a short applause, and then I locked eyes with Mrs. Caldwell. She was sitting at the back of the room at her desk. She looked so serious as she finished writing just a few more notes on her yellow legal pad. Then she carefully removed her reading glasses, stared for a moment, cracked a grin, and then she offered a lot of praise. Somehow, no matter how bad you felt you had done, she had a unique way to make you feel like you had done amazingly well, while still slipping in some tips for improvement. Ms. Caldwell would offer the support, encouragement, and critique that we needed to develop our skills and abilities. She custom-tailored her guidance to the level of the learner. She helped novices become advanced, and she helped advanced students become champions. Ms. Caldwell's positive influence went beyond coaching students in speech skills. One of my favorite memories was of her notorious happygram. The first day of class each year, she would have us write our birthdays on a note card. She would then meticulously organize those birth dates into a notebook that she kept on her desk. Each time a student had a birthday, you could expect her name to be written on Mrs. Caldwell's classroom board. That would be followed by a personalized note from Miss C, handwritten on a half-page form that always said happygram with a big smiley face on the top. Those notes were her way of letting each student know how special he or she was to her. I got one each year I was in her class, even days when the class didn't coincide with my birthday. A few years later, when I was a sophomore in college, my younger brother, he left high school early one Friday afternoon to come visit me for the weekend. He just happened to run into Miss Caldwell on his way out of the school, and he told her where he was headed. Miss Caldwell insisted that he wait just a moment so that she could write me a loving happygram for him to deliver. I still have that note, now over a decade old, hanging above my desk. It has brought me much joy and has been a source of strength during some very stressful times. Over the years since leaving Lindell, I have delivered numerous speeches. First as a college ambassador promoting my school, then as a graduate student giving science presentations, then as a medical student serving as speaker for the American Medical Association's student section. And I have frequently written back to Mrs. Caldwell to let her know how much her teaching has helped me along the way. I've been through a lot of schooling, but I still tell people that high school speech and debate is the most beneficial class that I have ever, or probably will ever, take.
Yes.
A few months ago, Ms. Caldwell started posting pictures online of memorabilia she had removed from her classroom wall in preparation for her graduation or retirement. This wall is a coveted place with pictures, notes, and newspaper clippings. I was a little surprised by one item that she posted online. It was a news story from 2014 when I had won a speech competition in Houston for Toastmasters, which is an international speaking club. I had sent her the article, and unbeknownst to me, she had printed and taped it to her wall with pride. This was another reminder of how special Ms. Caldwell students are to her and how their successes have defined her own. In the 1995 movie, Mr. Holland's Opus, viewers follow the story of a man who transforms the lives of his students, one life at a time, with music. In the final scene, those students, many now adults, come together in a grand retirement celebration for their teacher to play a symphony he spent a career creating. I still remember watching that movie and tearing up at the end at the profound and life-changing relationship between a very dedicated teacher and his students. Today's celebration, as you can imagine, is fittingly similar. Ms. Caldwell has spent a career transforming lives by teaching each and every one of us to be great communicators, inquisitive thinkers, and virtuous people. I therefore would like to close with one of my favorite lines from this movie, Mr. Holland's Opus, rewritten a bit for today. Miss Caldwell had a profound influence on my life and on a lot of lives I know. Rumor had it, she was always working on this symphony of hers. Her symphony was one of an ever-changing cast of communicators, speakers, and debaters who would come into her classroom as novices and leave a year or more later much more skilled. I therefore think Miss Caldwell has achieved a success beyond riches and fame. Just look around you today. There is not a life in this room that you have not touched, and each of us is a better person because of you.
Yes.
We are your symphony, Miss Caldwell. We are the melodies and the notes of your opus. We are the music of your life and teaching. From the bottom of my heart, thank you so much.
Okay, we're going to take a little break, and then I'll come back if my phone doesn't die.